You're listening to the Work Cultured Podcast, where good companies keep good company. You are listening and watching the Work Cultured Podcast. Welcome. Today, we've got Eric Youngstrom of Onramp, which is onrampfunds.com, which we'll talk more about in a sec. This guy has started and exited successfully, sold, the way to put that, many companies, it sounds like. And, we're obviously talking about culture today. And Eric has a lot of experience with a lot of different people, multiple teams to build them up, sell, have successful exits, and all that. So I'm really excited about this. Eric, just give me a quick and dirty bio on you and Onramp.
Sure. Yeah. Onramp is the fifth startup I've worked for. The others have all found some sort of way to exit. I wasn't part of all those exits, right? Really, only one was I there beginning all the way through the exit. Others I was there either I came in near the exit or another one I came in first employee hired by the founders, was there about 6 years. They exited about 4 years after that. But I'd made a contribution, right, and had kept my shares so that I participated in the exit, but I didn't actually help close that deal. Have really I went to grad school. I finished that. I worked for Deloitte for a few years, and then in 2004 moved into the startup world, and have been doing that ever since. I actually moved into startups when I got engaged because I didn't think consulting was a career that was going to make for a very successful marriage. So 19 years later, we're still married, and startups have been good to my wife and I.
Wow, almost 2 decades of both marriage and startups.
That's right, yeah.
Neither are easy.
Neither.
It turns out.
Yeah. Neither are easy. Both worthwhile.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, okay, so we'll dive in the way we do with all of our guests, which is to ask you the question, what's a mistake that you've made in leadership that you'll never forget?
I like to try to forget my mistakes. Not that I don't want to learn from them. I just don't want to dwell on them.
Okay.
So I'll talk about one recently, though, is just how you present things, or a mistake I made in how I presented things really left members of the team feeling like there was a team member that we let, or that I was moving out as opposed to helping address. And so just the way I said a few things really came across, harsh to the exec team. Unfortunately, we limited it to the exec team. And really had to go back and just sit down and say, hold on, guys, I'm not trying to move a person out of a role. I'm not trying to end their time here. What I'm trying to do is make sure that we're actually looking at gaps, we're looking at hurdles and removing those. And so helping do that during this period of time is super important, right? But it's not a criticism of, that's what a small business, that's what a startup is, right? You're always trying to remove hurdles so that you can operate more efficiently until you reach a point, right, where process becomes what carries a business forward. And in the early stage, process does not do that. But as the CEO, right, you can say something in a way that sounds like completely innocuous, but turns heads, right? And so, fortunately, inside of Onramp, the executives felt very comfortable when we say, hold on, Eric, what does that mean? Like, you're going after this guy. I'm like, oh, no, that's not what I mean at all.
Yeah.
Right. We're just going to go, look for more hurdles to get out of the way, more barriers to remove, so that we're just running more efficiently. And we're going to do that with our team, not in spite of our team. So yeah, just, it's funny how your words change, or the interpretation of words can change when you're in a leadership position.
Absolutely.
Right. Or even where in the leadership hierarchy you are, right. It just has a different impact. And so, I've sat alongside CEOs at startups. I've helped CEOs. I've helped CEOs raise money, but I've never been the guy responsible for the raise, right? So I knew that, hey, if we don't raise, we won't be able to make payroll, right? But when you're the guy who's responsible for that, it's a whole different level of responsibility and stress. And so, it's the same thing when you're, your words just carry different weight, different meanings. You have to be really, really careful about how you're articulating things and presenting things to your team, so that what you're not doing is just by a poor choice of words, creating drama or tension in an organization, when the whole point of this, right, is that we're all in this together, working together, solving problems together, and a problem that one of my reports has, or one of the team members has, is also mine to help solve. And so I'm trying to do that from really that perspective. How do I help so that we can all run more efficiently? And there's some areas where I'm going to be probably very helpful because it's my skill sets. Other areas where I'm not going to be nearly as helpful. And I find it's the areas where I'm not going to be nearly as helpful, where, because of just lack of experience, I'm more likely to cause a problem with how I present things than be as helpful. So that's where I just have to be much slower and more thoughtful before I kind of jump in.
Yeah. Do you tend, just if your kind of hardwiring or your natural state, do you feel like you're usually just go and without kind of that taking that thoughtful, intentional time?
Typically, yeah. I mean, and I think
I certainly am.
Well, and I think that's the beauty of having a team, right? Is when I was very early stage, before his team started coming in, before I started, raising money that I could go bring a team on, then there were certain things that I could go on, and there were other things that I didn't know well enough, so that I had to be thoughtful. And then I think probably the challenge was I might have been more thoughtful than was, analysis paralysis kicks in, right? Because I don't know what to do, and in that case, then I don't want to make a mistake, but the mistake might have been going slower than I should have. The beauty of having a team, right, is that then, we've got Matt running our sales team. Matt's a great sales leader, right? Really knows how to motivate that team, drive that team, understands, the interplay of the inbound lead gen and the outbound sales efforts. And so I just get out of the way. But when it comes to the finance side of things, I'm really good there. And the joke is my happy place is Excel. And so then I'm happy to go jump in there, and I can move really, really fast there. Without, even with the rest of the team around me, right, that we're all kind of solving the same problems. And then because it's such a familiar area for me, it's really easy for me to say, hey, I found this, boom. And we've built a relationship around that where people just know, hey, Eric's helping. This isn't about him doing the job for me or taking responsibility away. It's just, we're all hands on deck.
Yeah.
Whereas on the sales side, right, I'm not going to be the guy that says, hey, here's how we're going to rework the sales script. That's just not my forte. So I don't want to get in Matt's way. Let him go do that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'm going to go all the way back because you said something when I asked the question. It makes me rethink how we asked that question, because you said, I try to forget mistakes, but I learn from them. So I guess what you're remembering is the learning, not the mistake itself. And I think that is an important differentiator. So it's almost better if we say, what's a mistake that you've made in leadership that you'll always remember what you learned.
Right. Well, yeah, no, you don't want to. I don't agree with people who say they live without regret. I don't know how the hell that's possible.
Yeah, same.
That being said, right, if you can never let go of it, right, like you got to learn. I mean, there's forgiveness and all that kind of stuff, right? And forgiveness is not just others; it's for yourself. And so, I don't want to dwell on those things, but I want to make sure that I'm learning from them so that I don't go repeat those mistakes. And so that's kind of the way I think about it. And I suppose if you give me 2 days, and I'll probably remember 3 or 4 things in my life that I'm really disappointed in myself for doing. But nothing comes to mind immediately, right? Because then all of a sudden you're on pressure, and you're like, oh, hold on. Of course I never made a mistake. Yeah. But no, it's about learning from it, right? I mean, it's about the growth that comes from all this stuff, and you can do that through self-reflection. You can do it through therapy. You can do it, through any number of different ways, right? Yeah. But it's important that it be done. Agreed,
completely. There's a podcast called You Are Not So Smart,
okay,
which I love just the title of it. It's just wonderful because I like to think I'm pretty smart, and then things like that are like, oh yeah, I'm pretty dumb, and have a lot to learn. And there is actually an episode about regret, and we're getting off topic from company culture, but it's a really fascinating topic because we all make mistakes, and we're never going to stop making mistakes. And there's hashtag no regrets and all that kind of stuff. But this whole episode was an expert that's like, regret's actually really good for you. Not shame and not like dwelling, like you're saying, right? You gotta let go of that. You gotta forgive. But like regret in and of itself as an emotion, as a reflective component of our mindset can be really, really good.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I don't think people actually mean it when they say it.
Right.
And I think if you do, you may actually be a sociopath. But you certainly have to, you can't hold on to it, right? You can't let, if it turns into shame or the inability to forgive yourself, you will just get stalled. So there's an important mix there, right? And so, yeah, I mean, you try to learn from all the things you've done, right? The good and the bad. And then, how do you get better at those things? And, and also then, back into leadership and culture, right? That's where you're looking to build a team around you that brings the skills you don't have, right? And then it's important to be able to say, hey, great, are we achieving the goals we set out, where your skills are going to deliver things that I can't do, and vice versa. But then as the leader also saying, hey, but are we getting the most out of those skills, right? And then how do we do that? Even if I'm not the person that says how to get the most, because I don't know that side of the business, right? I can't tell the engineers how to go code faster, right? But what I can do is ask the question, right? And then, and then I can set the example of, there's no job in the business that I won't do, and there's no amount of time that I won't put into it. And I'm not asking everybody else to, to do everything or to put, 100-hour weeks in if they're needed, or all the time. But when they're needed, I do want people to say, hold on, wait, we got to get over this hurdle, right? And if it just means that we're going to put in the extra time right now, let's go do that, because every single employee at OnRamp has options, right? Every single employee has been given the option to early exercise so that they actually own those things right away, can get the tax treatment around that, the tax benefits around that. And then the other reason for that was that I want to make sure every single employee, not every employee in a startup is going to be there, not every startup is going to exist for your whole career. And most startup employees will not stay at a startup for their entire career. Now, if OnRamp launches and we have somebody who starts here and gets to retire from OnRamp, that would be a really special thing, right?
Yeah.
But honestly, people might be with you for a year, for 2 years, for 4 years. I want everybody who's been at OnRamp, especially in these early stages, right, where the effort that's put in is what is going to sustain the business for the long term, right, and really set the pace. That when it is time for them to leave, that they get to take that with them. And I think it's an interesting thing with options, right? They become a pair of golden handcuffs, right? If they're structured in one way, but they can also then be like, hold on, like it truly becomes compensation. Now, as the company gets bigger and valuations change, right, that becomes harder and harder because they get expensive to go exercise. But certainly when it's day zero, they're very, very low cost. And I just try to make sure, that everybody got to participate in that.
Yeah, that's really huge. And so let's talk about you have what, about 30-ish employees? 26 employees. Yep. Okay. Well, is that similar to size teams that you've worked with and led before?
Yeah. At CS Identity, I was employee number 1 with the 4 founders, and within a couple months we were like 10, and then slowly built up over the number of years. I think we got there a little bit quicker with OnRamp, but we did a bigger raise early. And then with a lot of kind of stuff going on in the Austin market, a lot of the old Shipping Easy team, which is where I'd last been, right? That was the company I joined as one of the first execs, and then helped our CEO, and we grew that, and we were acquired by Stamps, and I worked at Stamps for a while. But a lot of those guys, there was an opportunity for them to roll out, and so we actually kind of picked up about half of the Shipping Easy team. So it was great.
Super cool. Yeah.
And so what happens then is you get, one, honestly interesting, right? Because most of us, or kind of half of us, have been working together now for a decade, right? And it's a new startup, but the old startup was also in the e-commerce world, helping the e-commerce SMB. So solving problems for the same clients. Now we're just solving a different problem, but bringing a ton of knowledge and wherewithal from the last decade's worth of work. And so that's really exciting, right? Because you're working with people that you love, that you've got tremendous respect for, that you also know, like, have been through day zero and on. And so, the problems are going to be different, but they fall into the same category of startup problems that we've all worked through and found a way through, and the stresses that come with that, right? So, and then you're bringing on new team members that are bringing on, new perspectives and, new ways of solving problems that are exciting as well, because like, I never thought of it that way, right? Or, here's a skill set that we definitively need, that none of us have, right? So we do finance, right? And none of us have a finance background. So we brought in team members with that, right? And it's been great to learn from them and to be able to apply their knowledge to the e-commerce world, and then also go back to them with, hey, hold on, but this is the difference for e-commerce versus some other segment, right? And then to meld those things together and create something that we think is truly unique and interesting in the world.
Yeah, and into, first I want to kind of give you some props there, some kudos, if you will, that, to sell a company and then be able to pull from those employees and they still want to work for you. That means you must have treated them well through that exit strategy. And that doesn't always happen. A lot of times employees kind of get the raw end of the deal, even laid off as a result of an acquisition or a merger. And, maybe that's happened, but also it sounds like at least a good chunk of them liked you and liked the vision and the strategy and the culture enough. They're like, yeah, I'll go work for him.
Well, I think one, there's kind of a few pieces to that, right? On the acquisition side, Katie was our CEO and really made sure that the team was taken care of. Two, we were acquired by Stamps, but we were acquired as an independent subsidiary. And so,
nice.
Kudos to the Stamps executive team, right? That they actually built a structure that kept those people together. And then, over the course of 4 or 5 years, began to put all that together in some new ways. And then, they were acquired by a big private equity firm and taken private after they were on the public markets. And then, that's where some of that kind of diaspora begins to spread out, right? But it's, I think, there's the PayPal mafia, right? I'd love to see there be, this kind of theory of, hey, those companies came together and now they're going off and building new startups, right? And broadening the Austin ecosystem, if you will. I think the other thing about it is, and maybe this is just semantics, but I don't think of people as working for me, is more of working with me, right? Like eventually you get companies that are big enough where the hierarchy start to kick in.
Sure.
But, at a startup stage, it's very flat, right? There's not, we all have the same $25 IKEA desk, right? We don't have walls. We have an open office floor plan with a bunch of conference rooms. So if you need to go into a room, you can. But there isn't a lot of hierarchy there, right? It's just up and down, and everybody's right there. Anybody who needs to ask anybody any question can. And so I think that's probably how you keep those relationships, right?
I agree.
And then the one is to be open and just like, look, this is where we are. This is what we're doing. Here's whatever challenge we have to overcome next. So there's no surprises, right?
Yeah, and words matter, and I think it really is important. It's not just semantics to say they work with me instead of for me. You hear people talk about human capital or people are our greatest asset. Like, I don't think I like that language. Like, wait, they're your asset? Like human capital?
Right.
Aren't they actually just humans, with a well-being and, all these kinds of things? And I'm guilty of using words like that in the past for sure, because they were buzzwords, they were whatever. I didn't put thought into what do these words mean, but I think they matter.
I do, right? And you're always looking for the right skills and the right contributions to be made. And it's not that you won't make mistakes along the way, and they're going to have to be addressed, right? And that's not a fun part of the job. But the goal is, right, to go have a team of people that you're creating something with, that you all get to look back. And, the product that I started testing 3 years ago to go build Onramp, or late 2019, it's not my product anymore. I contribute to the product,
totally,
but it's now
exactly
the Onramp product, right? And our 22-year-old product analyst and underwriter have made contributions. Our data scientists have made contributions, right? How it all comes together and works now, and our engineers, right, and our sales team bringing in the client feedback and putting that all together. It's so much more, and it's really cool that that's happened, right? Because it's actually what. It's more and more what the market needs, and that's why we're getting great market adoption and customer adoption and retention and whatnot. But it's because of that, right? And so it's awesome to see, and then the other really fun thing to see is how the ownership spreads, right? That you can see, our head of risk, John, how excited he is around the risk scoring, what that means, but also then not just the esoteric risk score, what that means for the client engagement, right? And how how that's impacting the success of the business, and it's become his, right? And the sales team, when they're talking to customers, right? How because they're part of building this, right? That in an early stage company, your sales team is, especially when you have a sales team that's talking to customers, that's the voice of the customer. That's where you're learning, from the customer. And there's a lot of squeaky wheel stuff that can be in there, but there's also just a ton of great knowledge that comes from that. And so, it's not at our stage company, sales is not it's not coin operated, right? And I hate using that word about sales, but there are places, right, where it's very much here's the process and you just run through it over and over again. In a startup, right, sales is also teaching the business, okay, what are the product challenges? Also, what are the sales challenges? Hold on, what are we seeing for marketing in terms of lead gen, right? What does that mean in terms of ongoing retention and kind of first engagement to, can we keep that customer for 3 years? Those are different challenges, right? Yeah. And so startups are learning organizations, and that means everybody's helping us learn and get better, right? Even, if you're in sales, you're not just in sales, right? If you're in engineering, you're not just in engineering, right? It's all coming together. It's about the learnings.
So what are some of the things that you feel like you guys have done really well in building out a team? Because that's a team that that needs to be open to that feedback loop and knowing that they're part of this mission and this company that you're building together, right? You're reshaping the product as you talk to clients, as you talk to each other, as you bring on new people. So those people have to be kind of bought in to a certain degree, more than just like, oh, I have a job. And so what are some of the things that you've felt like you guys have done really well to bring on the right people and get them really engaged?
Well, one, I think there's a story to a startup that's more than revenue, right? Or more than we're going to go build something that's worth some huge number one day that we're all going to participate in. Yeah. And so for me, when I landed, and I'll give you the kind of the origin story then. So when I landed at Shipping Easy, what was really exciting after probably the first 6 months was we had this guy who's making his product at home, and was a pastor. And he's like, hey, most pastors have to work a day job, and then they preach on the weekends, right? And this guy's like, hey, I quit my day job because of you all, because now I can actually sell enough on my e-commerce store that I don't have to have that other job, and so I can be my own boss while being a pastor, right? And this is going to free up my time. And he's like, your software may be more efficient, and that was just like psychically, right, rewarding, right? Beyond the, hey, great, we've got more customers coming in, people are liking the product, they're engaging, they're staying with it, right? Where you're going to get the revenue. Actually, hold on, I'm actually making the world a little bit better. Yeah. And then what we've done at Onramp is kind of, there's the story around that, but then there's the bigger societal impact, which is if you look at the history of the United States and then the history of kind of freedom and societies evolving in a way that they give the most voices, the most impact, it's small business owners. Mm-hmm. And so you can trace this all the way back to the emergence of the Greek city-states through Rome, see what happened in the Dark Ages, and then through into the U.S. And so one of the things we talk about right on Onramp is we want to help more small business owners thrive, because it's going to make for a safer and freer and healthier world in America. And so there is a mission that's beyond just closing the next deal. Mm-hmm. Now, in the day-to-day, right, we're trying to solve, like, how do we close the next customer, right? All that kind of stuff, right? You can't just have mission, right, and not also just the realities of the world. But when you put those two things together, right, people get excited about that, right? Mm-hmm. And it excites me, and it's why, when the going is really, really hard, and there's plenty of times when it is, that you're still really excited about solving the problem, because there's something more than just a paycheck associated with it.
Yeah. So keeping that mission, that purpose, that bigger picture in mind,
right,
throughout that probably hiring process, kind of casting that vision as you're talking to people, as you're bringing them on, onboarding, et cetera, has been an effective way of kind of getting some stickiness to those folks.
Yeah. You're sharing the story, right? Yeah. And then it becomes mission, and it becomes a shared mission, mm-hmm. right? And then, we've lost customers because they've outgrown us. Well, hold on, like, if our mission is to help them become more and more sustainable, somebody outgrowing what we do means they've reached a level of sustainability that's awesome, right? Yeah. And by the way, that means, but there are always new businesses emerging. So let's go ahead and turn our attention to the next 10 and see if we can get a couple of those guys to that stage, right? Or be a part of that journey, right? So that, having somebody outgrow you, then it is disappointing. It is churn, right? But at the same time, we now call it graduation.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's kind of like, hold on, that person graduated. All right, let's take pride in that, right? That
Absolutely.
we got to play a part in that. And then for the people who aren't graduating but leaving us, okay, how do we make the product better so they don't need to leave, right? But I think sharing that kind of broader vision gets people excited about coming to work every day and wanting to be part of, building that business that has a purpose beyond just dollars and cents.
Yeah.
Now, the dollars and cents are incredibly important. You can't take your eye off that,
Of course.
right?
Yeah.
They're the validation that what you're doing is actually of value to the world, right?
Sure.
But then you get a layer that additional value on, and it just makes it that much better.
Yeah. I love that. So what about the flip side? What are some challenges you're facing? I mean, you're growing, you have a good team. They're probably most of them, if not all of them, are the right people in the right seats, but still people dysfunction happens everywhere. Every business problem is a people problem.
Yep.
Including the one-man show. So what are some challenges that you're facing right now when it comes to culture?
The big challenges on my mind right now is actually less about culture. It's more about the macro conditions, right? We're going through another fundraise right now, and that's always a fun time. But now it's even more hard because of the macro changes. From a culture perspective, I think it's just helping the team. Well, so in 2022, we had what some would call a regime change, right? We went from, in the startup world for a decade with zero interest rates and until 2 years ago, essentially no inflation. The mentality of most startups is grow at all costs, right? And investors was that as well. And in 2022, that changed, right? And so historically, you would go out and raise more money and to fuel more growth, even if you weren't kind of getting some of the more, meat and potatoes metrics of just $1 free cash flow. And so helping the team, especially my younger team members who've not been through a recession, right? I have team members who, some of our youngest guys didn't, they weren't even in college when the great financial crisis hit.
Yeah.
And a lot of my team might have been early in their career when the great financial crisis hit. I think I'm the only guy on the team that actually survived the .com bust, right?
Wow.
And so, just having the perspective of having been through recessionary environments and those types of regime change, right, helping people get along through that was not easy, right? Because oh no, we're supposed to just grow. Let's just go throw more money at a problem. Like, no.
Yeah.
Things are changing, right? And we're going to have to adapt to that. And I hope I helped the company adapt quickly enough to that. But it wasn't easy, right? It is getting people's heads around, and I think I heard it Will describe the other day on a different podcast, people would increase their expense line in anticipation of revenue. And now if what I think most businesses ought to be is you increase your expense line in response to revenue.
Yeah, sure.
Right, which means you may actually find you're going to grow a little bit slower. You may find that you left a few leads on the table that you couldn't convert because you didn't have a big enough team. But in fact, now it's okay. We'll now go hire for that because the revenue's there.
Yeah.
Right. Not, hey, let's go put a big team on this and then revenue will show up. And if it doesn't, well, what do we do then? Well, I don't want to have to go do layoffs, right? That's a really hard part of the job.
And you see the big name companies that were like really exemplified that. I mean, even, the Ubers and the WeWorks were just pouring money into something before the revenue was there, certainly before any profit was there.
Right.
And it does not go well.
Well, Uber had a different problem, right? Because they had Lyft with all kinds of money from outside of the U.S. where nobody cared about the unit economics. I think that's changed now, and I hope it has. And hopefully, those guys will all start to kind of figure out their network effects. But yeah, certainly for other early stage companies, right? If there were more dollars just going to be delivered to you, then you had there was less discipline required.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, we're back in an environment where there's just a lot more discipline on spend. And what you want to do is let the revenue come and then bring your expense line up until you're at a point where you can just say, hey, look, we don't need to add more expense now. What we need to do is just get, how do we now drive the efficiencies, right? And every business gets to that point, right? Or every business that survives for the long term gets to that point.
Yeah.
But between here and there, right, that's where the investments come in.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you make sure it's a real investment as opposed to a bet, right? I don't
Sure.
I don't want to make bets.
Yeah.
I want to make investments.
Yeah.
Right. Not all will come good, but there's a rationale behind them.
Yeah, yeah. Now you said something I found really fascinating because you're the first person who's kind of brought this generational difference up. I mean, we're hiring people now that Y2K is just the year they were born.
Right.
They have no idea.
Yeah, good point.
What that means, And 2008, they were not even in their teens. So like, yeah, they have never been through an economic change like this, and they're got to start feeling the impact. I mean, so many people are already paycheck to paycheck anyways.
Right.
And when eggs now are double the price, I mean, it's something that, a lot of us don't really think about and kind of like, oh, that's annoying, but it doesn't shake us. But we have employees that are, I mean, it's going to shake them. And we have to be able to think through ahead of time, like, hey, what are they going to be feeling through this? And how can I, as a leader and my executive team, how can we like kind of meet them where they are in a unique way? Because they've never been through it.
Well, and from my perspective, right, even at my age, having lived through the dot-com bust and in a career through that cycle and through the great financial crisis, we haven't seen inflation like this since 1980.
Yeah.
Right now, I was 9, and so I have a recollection, but not a recollection of something costs more. Right. Just it was the talk.
Yeah.
Right.
And money means nothing when you're
right. Nothing.
that age.
Yeah. But it was the talk, and then I remember just the Reagan became president, and then all of a sudden there was this kind of euphoria in the country and a kind of a shift in mood that that you can look back on and see. But even growing through that, but now we're back in those inflationary times, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a way that it's been 40 years, right? And
Yeah.
you can't blame people for what the hell do you do, right? Like
Yeah.
nobody's seen it for 40 years,
Yeah.
right? And even if even my parents, right, who lived it viscerally, right? Like, crap, what did we do 40 years ago? That's through this, right?
Yeah.
And then, they're fortunate enough that they're in their retirement years. And so,
But I mean, even that generation can have its own issues they're facing because a lot of
income.
them, yeah,
inflation
they're
has a
not
massive
earning. They
impact.
can't just increase their earnings
Right.
anymore. Yeah.
Well, and then Social Security adjusted to that with COLA, but like people were bragging, hey, we increased Social Security. Well, hold on, but you also increased inflation. So there's really no net gain there. In fact, it's not keeping pace. So
Right.
there's still a net loss.
Mm-hmm.
It's just we're trying to help those people. Tying that back to culture, right?
Yeah.
It's trying to help the team. I mean, you don't want to be the old man, telling stories when you were a young boy. But at the same time, it's just trying to help them understand, like, what does this mean? And yes, we can still go build a successful business, but we may take a path that's going to look very different from the path that Shipping Easy was on, because it was Shipping Easy was a 2012 to 2016 cycle before things got really frothy, right? And so that was a different path, right? And then Stamps.com, we were there 2017 through, I was there to 2020, some other guys up till 2021, 2022, right, where it was frothy, but you were already in a public company. So you weren't solving the same problems. It was a different set of challenges and a different set of opportunities. And then you come in here and, I had guys join in 21 and 22, but it's really changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
The world is now fundamentally different in terms of risk reward and what people are looking for us to do. And so I think it's trying to find a way to tell the story. Now, the thing that's great about startups is we're not public. So I don't have to go, it's not that I have SEC limitations on what I can say because it creates insider trading problems, right? Like, great. We can just be an open book. So, every month, like, here's the state of the business. Here's what's happened, right? When we did the December update in January, we actually didn't do a December update. We did a 2022 update. Like, here's everything, went well. Here's what we learned, right? All this kind of fun stuff. Then, we get to February, we do January, back to month, right? But it is like, hey, here's here's our P&L, right? Here's how much we're burning. Here's how much we have left in cash. Here's what that means for our runway, right? So that we're all in this together trying to figure out what we're going to do next, right? So that we're either getting to a point where we've got $1 in free cash, which means we don't have to ever raise again, or what are we doing to make sure that if we're going to go raise more capital from investors, that we have a story that is exciting, right? That says, hey, we're on the right path. And that, the investors are going to look at it and say, yeah, we agree. Let's go ahead and joining you on that journey, right? And so I think that's one of the things I really like about startups is just how open you get to be, right? And what I want for the team to understand is you're going to, again, your career is probably going to span a bunch of startups if this is what you want to do. So I'm trying to be as open as possible so that they can say, okay, great, what can I learn from this? Either, you might be 22, 23 years old and not a leader in the business, but you should be learning from it. And then when you get to the next startup, like, hold on, maybe Eric was a terrible leader. And now I'm seeing an amazing leader in front of me. Well, that's like, holy crap, I didn't know how bad he was. Or, hey, man, I didn't realize just how good a leader Eric was, right? Because I'm now seeing a really bad one. But you should be able to take those experiences, right, and then apply them for the rest of your career. And, at 51, I don't know that I get to do another startup after this, right? So for me, like, this is an opportunity to try to make, to go swing away as a founder for the first time, but also to help, I've got executives in their 30s and 40s, right, who still have 2, 3, 4 more startups in front of them. And, to help them be able to go pursue those dreams and hopefully maybe even found their own one day, right? So you can say, hey, look, Onramp had an impact as well, and we had our own diaspora, right, that went out there and did great things after it.
Yeah, that really is incredible. I love that. I did a time check, so I want to kind of move to the next segment, which is really, it kind of makes sense anyways, because I think, so we talk about plugs, like what do you want to plug? And I'd like to hear a little more about Onramp, because a lot of the things we're talking about will make a lot more sense with context of what it is you guys do with like funding e-commerce and things like that. So give me the quick and dirty of Onramp. And then if there's anything else you want to plug, please feel free.
So we provide a working capital product for e-commerce SMBs. So basically, if you're an e-commerce business owner with less than $10 million in annual revenue, and for early stage guys with your first 5,000 in 30 days revenue, right? That's where we bookend. We have financial solutions available that help you, pay for inventory, pay for advertising, pay for shipping and fulfillment. We're solving the working capital problem and the cash conversion cycle problem of a small business. So I'm going to give an example. So if you have $1 million a year revenue business, right? Great. Hey, $1 million. That's fantastic, right? You've really accomplished something there. $250,000 in revenue a quarter. That probably requires somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 in capital, right? To purchase inventory, to pay for Google ads or Amazon ads, to pay the Amazon commissions, and to pay the shipping and fulfillment of that inventory. So round about day 60 to day 75, you finally have sold enough and manage the cost of goods sold as you're selling, that profit dollars are emerging, right? Before that, you were just basically recovering the early investment. Profit dollars are emerging, but now it's day 60. Well, I need to go buy more inventory so that Q2, I've got more to sell. And so what happens, that cash conversion timing basically captures all the profit of a small business owner somewhere until they're somewhere $1 million to $3 million in revenue. You finally get to enough where there's some dollars coming back out. So the end of the year comes around and your accountant's like, hey, congratulations, you had a 10%, 15% profit margin on that $1 million business, and here's your tax bill from the IRS. And your wife's saying, well, why the hell are we still eating PB&J? Because there's no cash, right? Yes, you have an accounting profit. It's on paper, but your cash is tied up in inventory. And all of a sudden, oh, by the way, inventory is an asset. And so that can get taxed. And what just happened? And so what we do is come in with cash that says we're going to fund that part of the business. It's a 30 to 150 day, essentially a loan, that then allows the merchant to take their personal capital that's tied up in that and pull that back out and say, you want to use it to pay your salary? Do you want to use that to reinvest in the business and grow faster, right? And because we're so tightly aligned with this cash conversion cycle and the working capital cycle of these small businesses, we can actually increase how much we give to the merchant, every 7 to 15 days, because we're actually monitoring the daily sales feeds.
Yeah,
right?
you API tie into a
Correct.
Shopify or whatever else. Yeah, so you're seeing it live.
We see it live. We know every single order. We know exactly how, if pricing's changing, if margins are changing, if the use of coupons is changing. And so because of that, right, if your sales are accelerating, or, we have seasonal indexing and things like that. So we know, hey, great, it's July, August. You don't need more for August, September. You need more because you've got Christmas coming, right? And let's help you get ready for that, right?
Yep.
Then when November and December are here, you're ready for you're pulling money for Q1. Like, we don't need nearly as much, so let's not give you so much money that you're just paying for funds you can't efficiently use, right? Let's actually allocate that appropriately for where the business is now. Some businesses, right? Hey, if you sell supplements, your Christmas season is actually January. Everybody wants to feel healthy.
Yep.
Right? You sell seeds, right? It's the spring, right? And so what we're doing is in aligning with that and really understanding the business, and this is where that shipping easy and stamps experience comes in, right? We've been building these workflow management and shipping and fulfillment and inventory management and all these other pieces of software for the back office of the merchant, and we're able to take all that learning from a decade of working with the exact same merchant sellers now to say, hey, great, here's how we're going to solve the working capital problem, and that you're already using software solutions that provide the efficiency back there, but the cash piece is missing.
Yep.
And so we've built this specifically for that. We've deployed $30 million in the last 12 months.
Wow.
Helping these merchants, and I'm hoping we're going to do 7-8 times that this year.
That's incredible.
So yeah, it's a really cool product, and it's fun to help the small business owners and see them grow and to participate in that, right? And some guys who started it with us, 8, 9, 10 million revenue, and they've kind of since moved on because they've graduated, right?
Sure.
Congratulations, that's awesome, right? We're a part of that journey. We have other guys where they're their first $5,000 in revenue, and we're giving just a little bit of cash, but it's helping them learn, like, hold on, that is my cash conversion cycle, so that as their business grows, instead of running into a stumbling block, like, they're already aware, right? Because they've been using it very, very early on.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big range of, if anybody's listening, an e-commerce store of any kind, 5,000 to million or plus in revenue, like onrampfunds.com. Yeah.
Yep.
That's really cool. Anything else you feel like plugging?
I mean, I don't know. I have another plug. I would simply say, for one of the things we're trying to help the online sellers through inflation is, you have two choices to drive margin into a business. You can increase your price, you can reduce your costs. And I think with inflation, you have no choice but to increase price. And one of the things we keep advising sellers is, for your loyal buyers, push coupons, push promotional discounts, things like that. Even for your new buyers, you might even just say, hey, input 10% off in the promotion field, and you're going to save 10%, but then raise the price 10 or 20% or whatever it is, so that eventually that promotion is going to go away. But what you start to psychologically teach your buyers is the price is going up. Right. Now I'm letting you buy it at yesterday's price today because of this promotional or this coupon. Yeah. Right. But you're starting to teach people that, hey, the price is going to have to change.
Yeah. That's really good
because
advice.
if you don't, you're not going to be in business. Right. Yep. You're just going to be selling at a loss, and that doesn't last for very long. Right. And I don't want to see people have to go through this. Right. But this is the impact of a 5 to 9% inflation rate, is that those costs have to get passed on, or you have to get even more hyper efficient on your back end to wring cost out of the business, so that you still have the margin that you need.
But with every supplier also raising the rates, that's near impossible to do right now. So,
and every shipping carrier, right, having to raise the rates, and then, hey, as wages increase, right, in 3PLs, those prices are going to go up, right? So, it's just something you have to manage, and so there are ways to do that where it doesn't come as a sticker shock to your customers. And so you really want to be thoughtful about that, so that you can start to pass along those costs, but in a way that the customer feels like they're part of the journey and they're getting their head around it early. So when finally that discount goes away, okay, last month or a quarter ago, it was $20 and now it's $25, right? All right, I'm there. But overnight. Like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Right? You can scare people too with it. So you want to manage it appropriately.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm going to end with a fun, just kind of quick fire.
Okay.
So I'm going to say 5 different this or that's, and you just the first one that comes to your mind.
Okay.
First one, beer or wine?
Neither.
Neither. Okay.
Liquor.
Which
Yeah.
kind?
Tequila.
Oh, really? All right. All right. All right. Spend money or save money?
Oh, I'm probably spending more than I should.
Bus or train?
Train.
Yeah. Baseball or volleyball?
Volleyball.
If you even play. I don't know. Last one, call or text?
Text.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we like to end off just with a little bit of fun and silly.
I like
it. Let's just kind of put an end cap on it. It's been Eric Youngstrom with Onramp. Fantastic interview.
Thank you.
Appreciate everything you've given us here.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. Well, this is the Work Culture Podcast, and we are signing off.